The Apple Vision Pro is officially available for pre-order. U.S. Apple fans can officially put in their orders to receive the new mixed reality headset when it is available in stores on February 2nd, but hefty price tag, $3,500. Is it accessible enough to be the next big thing for the tech giant? That's the big question. Bank of America seems to think so. An analyst writing in a note Thursday, the Vision Pro can be a meaningful new device for Apple, helping to drive revenue for the company. Our next guest had the chance to slip on that Vision Pro headset and try it out. We've got Victoria Song, the Verge senior reviewer of Wearables. Victoria, got to know your takeaway here.
Hi, good morning.
Hey, good morning. Is it worth it? $3,500.
That's really going to depend on what you think about VR because, Apple's calling this their spatial computing device, but for all intents and purposes, if you've used a VR headset, this is very similar. It's just got that Apple take on it, which means, the screens are very high res. It's two separate 4K screens that are being zoomed straight into each eyeball. So, it's a lot. It's very hard to actually describe what it looks like when you're in the actual demo. And I only had 30 minutes with it. Obviously other reporters are also getting control to demos like I did, but if you're a believer in Apple and if you have any sort of curiosity with VR, I think you will probably be very impressed by what the Vision Pro has to offer.
Victoria, we just had a full screen up on the screen that's comparing Apple's device to some of the other products that are out there on the market right now. What we've heard from Meta specifically, how do you think Apple's headset stacks up to some of its competitors?
Well, one thing is that I will say this is the most high resolution VR headset that I've ever tried. There were points where I was looking in the demo and I was like, oh my God, I'm on top of a volcano and the rock is extremely textured. I wasn't expecting to see the texture of the rock. That said, I got some time with Meta's most recent Quest headsets and they're quite good for a fraction of the price. So it's really, what do you want to do in mixed reality? What do you want to do in VR? That's going to kind of define whether or not you think the Vision Pro is worth it. One thing I'll say is that when I put it on, it felt very familiar immediately, just because there's a digital crown, which is very similar to the Apple Watch. And then the interface itself is very similar to using a Mac, just in a different space. So that's one thing. Another thing is we didn't really get to try any games. So if gaming is your first priority, you may want to just stick with a Meta Head Quest.
Victoria, in terms of priority that this is going to be for Apple down the line and the fact that this could potentially, Bank of America making the argument that it could potentially boost sales of iPhone over the next couple of years, given the fact that people are going to be upgrading their phones to better be able to use some of this latest AR and VR AI type of capability here. When it comes to that demand and how big of a driver this could be for Apple's revenue down the line, what are you hearing or what are you expecting?
That's really hard to say just because this is a new category. Anytime, people like myself have looked at a new Apple category when it launches, there's a tendency to go oh, who's going to use that, right? There were people who were skeptic of the iPhone. There were people who were skeptics of the Apple Watch and for the iPad. And largely they were proven wrong, right? But sometimes it takes a while to get there. This is a very emerging category. It's extremely nascent. The price tag is pretty big, right? And from what I saw of the spatial videos and the spatial photos, I don't think we necessarily as a culture know what we want from those things. So it's going to be a matter of early adopters globbing on first and seeing what they have to say. But as for the average person, I think it's going to take a while. I think it's going to take Apple a while to figure out how they want the average person to view this device and how they want to use it. App developers are going to have to get on board en masse. And while there's going to be a lot of apps available at launch, there's a question as to how much are going to be natively available for Vision OS. So this is sort of a wait and see type of thing. And it's a lot of how much do you want to bet against Apple given their track record? And then how much do you believe in VR? So it's a wishy-washy answer, but I wouldn't bet against Apple, but this is kind of the most far out of left field that they've gone in a long time.
Victoria, I'm curious, you've closely followed Apple now for quite some time. The ruling that we got earlier this week upholding the initial ruling banning Apple from selling its Apple Watches with a blood oxygen sensor. In terms of what this could mean for future product innovation down the line, or maybe how this could potentially change, or do you think it's going to change how Apple incorporates some technology into its products beyond, obviously, just this technology?
It might. They might be a little more careful with how they go about licensing the tech, but Apple is Apple. I don't think, are going to change their strategy with regards to patents. They are the most sued company in Silicon Valley. So this is just kind of different in that, normally Apple wins these cases. This is one of the first times we're seeing them kind of face some consequences. But I'm not sure they're going to change their strategy going forward. I think we will eventually see blood oxygen return in some capacity to the Apple Watches, right? It's not a fully fledged feature on any wearable yet, but at the same time, Masimo's patents only go for another couple years. So after that, it's going to be fair game. So we'll just have to see how this adapts over time. The appeal is still ongoing. It could be that the appeals court rules in Apple's favor, in which case we'll all have blood oxygen back relatively soon. So it's another case of we'll have to see how it plays out in the court.